Previously on the PalHARDS.
These are cards that probably shouldn't be in the format anyways.
Witherbloom and Tatiova are bedfellows.
But it's like gotten to the point where it's just too stressful now, man.
Yeah, we've got Oubliette and Vanishing are banned. These are cards that probably shouldn't be in the format anyways, just like plain and simple, the way that phasing works.
Phasing's so ugly, man. Like,
it's super ugly. It's awful to explain to new people, and a lot of my efforts are around introducing people to it. And when somebody who's brand new gets their commander oublietted when we're trying to get them into the format, it's awful, right? Because they don't understand.
Scrub. Get good.
Well, there's that.
Yeah,
there's that. But there's a lot of other reasons too. The way that these things just get kind of like jerk circle passed around to each other is just awful. Like you get 3 of those on the table and people start bouncing them with Into the Royal and Blink of an Eye and Boomerang and Echoing Truth, and they're just coming down the next turn on somebody else's commander, ruining everything. It's just there just isn't really an effect like that belongs in this format that completely takes somebody's commander away from it. So basically, and it was by popular demand. I was kind of toying with the idea, but then people just were like so frustrated with it, and it feels a little weird in context because you'd think, oh, like black is powerful in PDH, but like why are we taking a card from black when blue is quite clearly like really dominant? But we are, and that's why phasing is going to. Vanishing is almost worse than Oubliette. Yeah, and Clay, I mean, you saw that with playing with power, right? Like Vanishing on your Crackling Drake, and it was just like
it's not fun.
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah, I'm an old martial artist, so like it is what it is. Like you get blocked or counterpunched or something like that. I mean,
you just got to deal with it.
That's the breaks, yeah. So,
I mean, that's another point though. Like some colors can't deal with that. And that's why
the thing.
I never liked Oubliette anyway. Like, what's red going to do against that besides sacking the creature?
And you're rarely going to have a mono red deck. I think in at least
maybe for you guys
in CPDH, you're never going to have a mono red deck. Like Zada is not a real CPDH deck in a lot of ways. Like I just don't. I know this is a hot take. It's very dangerous.
Many hot takes. I don't know, man.
It's an unbelievably scary deck, and so just nobody ever lets it do anything. And it's very easy to not let it do anything when you don't have any permission. And I'm saying just like ways to protect your thing, ways to counter. I mean, you don't need to have blue, but you got to have like something. And they have like Goblin Chirurgeon.
I was gonna say you need more than the Chirurgeon.
You need more than the Chirurgeon, and everything relies on that one card. So that's. But I'm not to hyper focus on that. It's just to say that that the impact of like a mono red deck not being able to deal with Oubliette is sometimes overhyped, I think, because it's just not commonly represented. But
it's not going to happen to you guys too often.
No, but a common color pairing is black. And then you get, Feed the Swarm, Debt to the Kami, Farika's Libation.
Lately, so I'm like okay with it almost.
Yeah, and so it's not as bad, but and I'm speaking from the position of an Oubliette enjoyer. I love casting Oubliette. I play black in most of my decks. I cast it all the time, but it just became clear that it was a real problem in our format. Yeah, and I think part of it was when blue-black players started to defend their Oubliettes with counterspells, was when it got really toxic and people started to get angry at each other, and it led to really bad games where like I'm sitting there looping Deprive.
Oh God!
Like I'm looping Deprive. Like you do not get your commander ever again unless other people want you to have it. And that's like, and PDH specifically is just one last thing on this. PDH specifically, the way that uncommons are so much better than commons leads these decks to be way, way more synergy focused. And without the commander, a lot of times your deck does nothing. And I think that is the number one reason why we got rid of it, is because this format is different than EDH. In EDH, you get rid of somebody's commander, a lot of times it's not ending the game.
They have like 30 other busted mythics in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they got tutors, they've got all sorts of stuff. They combo. Yeah. There's 4 different combos in their deck, right? Like, but in PDH, a lot of times that's not the case. And you take out the commander, defend that thing, and it just sort of leads to a non-game for that player. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I see where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to say though, I love phasing. Clay, I saw the face you made. I love phasing, but
Yeah.
it's not the best ability.
It's cool. I love a good sandbar crocodile.
Yeah.
So it's like this. Like I will preach it, and I've been preaching it in this league. Like I was for this upcoming league, I was going to play Tatiova myself until the guy organizing the league saying, "Okay, there's 2 Tatiovas in the league. Well, cool. I'll play something else." Like I am forcing. I was doing it with Weavers, but I did it with Weavers long enough to recognize that okay, Weavers really isn't a problem. It
No.
isn't. Yeah, Weavers is not a problem. Tatiova is still a problem. And the reason why Tatiova is still a
Yeah.
problem is because of that incremental value that I was telling you about.
Please.
So
You're just playing the game.
Yeah, you're just playing.
It's also
correct.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
also
So-
in something you get priority on. Like
Exactly. So in the same way, so I can't sit here rightfully so and say, look, prepare your deck. Whatever deck that you build, you have to prepare for Tatiova. You have to prepare for Witherbloom. You have to prepare for Oubliette. I can't say all of these things and preach all of these things without including Oubliette. So if you have to, and that's the thing, like antithetical to Ryan's point, I'm not just telling people to watch out for Vanishing, right? I'm telling them to watch out for these slew of things that they have to be planning for in their deck building, and Oubliette is just one of those things. So whatever in-color options you have, this is life,
Sure. And
Gotta learn how to
I think
steer,
that this is there's some I think increasingly we have better answers to Oubliette, and I think that when we only had Feed the Swarm, it was a different story. So it's something that we might revisit at some point, but I think that the sentiment from 99% of the people, we literally have one person in our like large meta that like wants Oubliette around. And actually it's not that they don't want it or that they want it around, it's that they are arguing as like a devil's advocate. They don't actually want the card around. Like, and if Oubliette just said killed the creature, basically, it was errated to allow you to send it to the command zone, it would not be an issue. So
Or that phased out permanently is why it's ridiculous.
yeah,
It gets down a tenet of commander, which is like you can always get your commander back.
Okay.
yeah.
So tier list, Oubliette, we covered that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Phasing, I guess.
Deck building constraints. I guess we didn't really talk about
Hold on a second. I want to go back to the life total thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Go back to life total thing.
We haven't sunk our teeth into this very firmly yet.
We sort of branched off.
Yeah.
We like we said, we play 40-21.
Yes.
And with all the new initiative stuff and these commons being ridiculous, we've been half joking about bumping life total up even higher.
We're probably not going to do it.
We're probably not going to do it, but like this game are ending quick, and I kind of think 50 is good.
Well,
Yeah,
you mentioned
I hear ya.
early. Yeah, you kind of mentioned earlier in the video though that your meta is all about inundating the battlefield with resources.
Yeah.
All of the players get every resource that they want. So like playing mini creatures, playing big creatures, playing whatever, like you're enabling those strategies. So I feel like you're chipping away. Like,
Makes sense.
I had to like deep dive into aggro, see what that looked like for CPDH, just to try to whittle down the time that it takes to play.
Yeah.
I mean, we were having hours of games, like 3,
Like
4, 5 hours.
Yeah, like crazy stuff.
Now we're sitting at an hour and a half, and that's because I'm beating people with rats and other things, or Sailor's Band.
Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah, I mean,
everyone countering each other.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, our play style, I mean, especially with these newer cards, our games are easily getting down to like 40 minutes every once in a while, or even less, depending on the circumstances. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think just the way we played, we've never felt an issue with the life total. I can understand how it could be an issue with, different types of decks, but combo, really, with combo is what it is.
Combo setting like that, like it does hurt aggro. Having 30 more points to go through is fucking brutal.
Yeah.
For Pal's meta and all the initiative shit, each creature's getting +2 counters. Each player's losing 5 life for trap. each
Yeah,
card's
yeah.
getting 3 cards off the top and getting a creature with 3 counter. Yeah, it's too much.
Oh yeah, I've been playing the Mr. Orfeo and Mayhem Devil quite a bit, and the initiative stuff.
It's too good. It's too good, man.
In initiative, well, I just want to mention I'm an initiative enthusiast right now. Okay, I am an enjoyer of the Underdark officially, and I was before. I used to read all the Forgotten Realms books with Driss Stewart and that whole crew there. I am playing actually in Pauper 60 card. I've been playing a deck I've nicknamed Grixis Dominatrix, and it's a dungeon deck that just it runs the initiative over and over and over again. And oh my god, is it busted? Like I had that card Sword Coast Serpent. I have 4 of them in the deck.
Oh, it's
And when
so
you
good,
when
man.
you Throne of the Dead 3 into your 9/9 hexproof unblockable,
I remember
it
that.
ends the game. Like it's just
End the
over.
game, for sure.
Yeah, because the way that initiative works, and I actually, guys, I've been playing this deck and 3-0ing with it, not realizing that when you have the initiative, you automatically go back into the dungeon if you've completed it. I have not been doing that, and I have been absolutely steamrolling people with the
You're
60
missing some
card deck.
steps there, yeah. It's
Oh
crazy,
yeah,
man.
majorly. And so when I finally started to do it with Mayhem Devil, it was like, oh my god, this is so disgusting. Like, like I want every single one of these initiative cards in my deck because the 5 life is huge, and especially in my meta, 5 life is like, yeah, you just like kill somebody. You're just like, oh, you're dead.
That's like game over right there.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
had that game last night where we got to the goat thing and the same creature was goated 3 times. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's so funny. Yeah,
it's great. It's a very powerful mechanic, but I also want to mention too that the initiative mechanic in PDH is, or at least in CPDH, it's a very specific decks that want it, right? Like I wouldn't, like even though you do have the life and there's some ramp and all this other stuff drawing cards, I don't know that it fits in Witherbloom Apprentice. It's not an automatic include, right? I would be almost more excited about it because it's a 1/5. Like the Vicious Battle Rager is just thick and unkillable. Like 1/5s die to like nothing in CPDH, like murder and cast down, like you know, Ob Nixilis' cruelty, some like really limited stuff.
In these competitive decks, how much do you guys play with Monarch?
Oh, I play Monarch in most of my CPDH decks, but I am a maverick in that regard. Most people don't hold the Monarch very high regard.
Okay.
In my experience.
You do not like it, or you do?
So, okay, so Ryan's point that I've heard him talk about, like we talk about it all the time, actually. I don't like the fact that it adds card advantage to the table uncontrolled in a chaotic fashion. So like when especially because I'm never the one with Monarch. So okay, so that
you're a little biased here.
yeah.
I think this is a good scrub, isn't it? Like
yeah. So
better.
So yeah, so definitely. So the good part about Monarch is that it speeds along the clock of the game in an alternative way. So you're forcing combats to reward people with card advantage. The problem is that people politicize that card advantage, and they'll like I've seen control players pass it back and forth, and I'm like,
oh, see, the big problem here is that they should never have had it in the first place. This is the thing is that I play Pauper 60 card. I've been playing it for 7 years now religiously, and I think it takes a person playing in 60 card or playing Legacy, to be honest, as well, to see that Monarch is a super broken mechanic. And I think that I just took that with me to PDH because like Witherbloom Apprentice doesn't have like ample ways to regain it. But dude, you just sit on that Monarch and you draw extra cards every turn. The trick is that nobody else is supposed to get it. And even speaking about Mayhem Devil too is another great example.
Hashtag ban Monarch.
No, dude, it's perfectly fine and balanced. It's perfectly fine and balanced. I think it's a fantastic mechanic in multiplayer. It's very self-balancing in that regard. I play a lot of Monarch. I play the Monarch also in decks that have lack of card advantage. So like Herd Baloth, I play all the Monarch cards in there too, because it really suffers from that. But then there's other decks too where you don't really want to be hit. Like Witherbloom Apprentice, you can afford to get hit. It's not a big problem. And Mayhem Devil, you're not really wanting to share it because you also you take a lot of damage off of stuff in Witherbloom or in Mayhem Devil, like Snuff Out, Feed the Swarm, all the draw cards, all that stuff. So you don't really want to get hit, but you also have like a lot of creatures, so you can block it. But generally speaking, in CPDH, Monarch is not commonly played. You'll see the pirates being played because they're pirates, and there are forms of evasion or unblockable. But
the 3/3 for 4 mana is the best one.
The unblockable one.
Immediately gets it back for free.
It's really strong. The 5/2 trample is
Crimson Fleet
Boarding
is very
party
good.
or something like that.
hits like a truck. Yeah, that's Crimson Fleet Commodore, and then there's Boarding Party. Yeah, but that's not Monarch. That's just cool.
It's
Good card.
Cascade. Yeah.
Just Cascade. Just
Something like
Cascade.
that.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of my read on it, is that there's just not a lot of Monarch. It's because the decks that there's just like Vizkopa is another good example. Great deck for Monarch because you're just gaining tons of life. You've got lots of ways to kill things so that people can't retake it. It's solid that way. But there's really like a narrow niche set of Monarch decks out there.
We went through a phase. We went through a phase where we jammed them into every single deck, and then that's when we just kind of discovered that Yeah, in fact, something that we've been talking about the last like couple of months is that you hear people talk about staple cards. Well, we're discovering that there's actually fewer overarching staple cards for like CPDH in general, and more archetype staples. Like certain archetypes
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, certain archetypes want very specific cards, and those might differ from what you would consider an overarching staple card for CPDH.
Well, and a really great example of that, you all were seeing the conversation about Gormod, Ghost of Ramirez, and Tormod, the Desecrator. That is a deck that wants to grind really hard. It wants to be in that position of drawing lots of cards, but it doesn't want the Monarch because it doesn't want to be hit. And it doesn't deserve to be hit. Like there's nothing about that deck until it's out of control that should be targeted, right? So it's not a deck that wants. I mean, you could, and it wouldn't be awful, but it's like you were talking about staples, right? Like you don't just slap Monarch or Initiative into everything. And even in that, now this might be a PAL's meta thing, right? Where you actually would, because you're wanting to pass it around.
Those are obvious included, man.
I mean, you're taking one person and getting initiative and at the same time, like every turn.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, and even better is when you're sitting on Monarch and the initiative. That's like god, it's so insane. It's unbeatable, right? Yeah. Yeah. I had like 5 turns near the end of my game in that the last Mayhem Devil game I played where I had both of them, and it was just like I don't think I can lose right now. Like it's just like it's insane.
Yeah, it's a lot of value.
Yeah. Now, a fun test of this would actually be with a commander that I am pretty bullish on, which is Sphinx of the Guild Pact. I am really, really interested in building that with all of the best removal, all of the best counter magic, and then every initiative and every Monarch card ever printed. And then you just put cranial plating in the deck. And then you have all the ways to tutor for it, and then the cranial plating comes down on the Sphinx, and then you just one-shot people. The Sphinx is like your eventual win con.
The Sphinx is like, I mean, 7 mana is rough, but like
it's a lot.
5 flying hexproof from mono card, like there's like 3 things in this format that can kill that thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
That reminds me of a deck we had a very long time ago. Basically, when we first started playing, like 7 years ago. Before we were streaming or anything. Another friend that doesn't really play with us anymore, he had a 5 color combo deck. It was Fusion Elemental and basically every different type of infinite combo and every transmute tutor and all that stuff. And it was just like miserable. And at the same time, we also had, you won't believe this, but I built Dormant Sliver combo. That was my first deck. But I had that. And he also built Warden of the Eye Flicker, like just flicker value. And we had Mist Meadow Witch. Like,
Did
And
these
that, I
games
think that's
end?
about when we retired PDH for quite a while.
You had fucking viral Drake too. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I was awful. I was the first person to build REX salvagers before DJ kind of.
You're disgusting.
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing back then. I'm like completely mono red now, but
Yeah.
that's about when we kind of quit until Fred, our other pal, he built Humble Defector, and that's what kind of brought us back actually. And that's when I think that's when we really delved into the pals meta, like
The enabling for sure.
because it's like just like passing Humble Defector and everybody gets 3 cards. It just made every deck feel good, and it got
The Veteran Explorer type stuff too.
Veteran Explorer, which is
Well, there's
because the rules changed later. But
what was
Humble
that new
Defector,
one that says when it enters the battlefield you draw a card, and then when it leaves everybody draws 2 cards?
the Fox
Fox or something like that.
card.
Like you draw 2 and everyone draws 1 or something like that.
Dude,
We
that's
have
perfect.
decks already. But I was also thinking back, and I'm still kind of trying to think about the life total difference. And I have to say, obviously, we all realize commons are getting way, way better, especially the last few sets, which I think has particularly aided maybe more aggressive, like kind of game ending strategies. Like people are talking about Commander Legends 2. Like we were so hyped for Commander Legends 2. Every single card in that whole set screams Pals meta. But we were kind of surprised to see everybody else. They were like kind of lukewarm on it because I think it didn't have much for like combo or like a competitive archetype or anything like that. And I feel like it's been more and more cards that aid the way we play and kind of these aggressive, just like everybody's just like getting a bunch of value, can do a bunch of damage to everybody. And I'm wondering if we'll reach a point where the life total does not need to be lowered to aid aggro and to kind of deter combo. Because I try to think about combo, like what the infinite combos are, and I probably don't know what they are now, but I feel like they haven't changed too much. The infinite combos, like you still got Virgin Drake, Flicker, right? Yeah. You still got Tidal Bout, Mystic Sanctuary. That's been around for a long time now, and I feel like
Eldrane's been around for like 3 years.
Yeah, it's been 3 years, man. But like, I feel like those can only go so far. Well, aggro is just kind of creeping up more and more towards the combo decks. Like you said, and combo decks aren't winning as much anymore. And maybe it's more the direction of like the incremental value stuff. I don't know. But I'm wondering if we'll reach kind of a tipping point where it's like, we don't really need to lower the life total to make it so that everyone's on a level playing field here. I'm just wondering if that'll happen.
Sure, and actually,
there's a common now. So
what's that? A Swift Spear? Yeah.
There's a common now. So
this is it's a really good point you're making here, and I admit that this is an experiment that we're testing with that was largely influenced by the fact that our games were just going too long. Like our games were like 3 hours long, 2.5 hours long, like on the regular, and it got to the point where it was like we need to do something about this because it was impacting the quality of our experience, and so that was part of it.
Man.
Admittedly, when we made that change was right before Mr. Orfeo got printed. Okay, and I'll tell you, I've 20'd people with a Gurmag Angler with Teamer Battle Rage.
Oh yeah,
and
it's easy, man.
Easy,
and mean man.
And really, to be honest, like a lot of the decks, a lot of the development in CPDH has been focused on combos. Like everybody seems to want to build around combo. I'm on a bit of an island myself when it comes to building grindy, mid-range, combo-less decks that just function on their own without the assemblement of cards that you need to do your thing. And it's not to say that there aren't other people building it. There's a lot of people in my local who are building that kind of stuff. But I think that the point you're making is actually something I think about quite a lot because in our local meta now with like Vizkopa Guildmage threatens a shitload of damage. It threatens killing people at 25 very quickly, like easily,
Without even trying.
Mr. Orfeo, when you're slapping down like what is it, the new Finclade Fugitives, which is the 6 mana 7 spore. 7/4 can't be blocked by creatures of power 2 or less, and then
Yeah.
encores. Like, yeah, you're slapping people for huge damage. Boarding Party, Altasaur. I mean, it's crazy. Even the new vehicles, right, are huge creatures.
Oh yeah, the vehicles are
Um,
ridiculous.
That 7 trample haste vehicle is
And it's
the
like
Andorra
game,
Express.
right?
and
Yeah.
even our Dark Express is great.
Yeah, and so this is like something that we're going to be assessing as time goes on. But essentially, here's what happened: is like prior to I would say New Capenna and prior to this other stuff, there weren't a lot of decks that could take advantage of there weren't a lot of decks in CPDH that were really able to apply aggressive pressure. They all end up looking like mid-range decks, and that's still true. Is that your aggressive decks actually are mid-range decks with an aggressive bent to them. You've got thick creatures. They're black, so they can't be targeted by Snuff Out, Seal of Doom, Vendetta, Ghastly Demise, Doomblade. They're above 4 toughness, so they don't die to Bolt. They don't die to they're not going to die to Fiery Impulse. They're not going to die to Frostbite. They're not going to die to a lot of stuff. When you start building around that, it's different. So it's not that those decks aren't viable. It's that people aren't building them. Like Mr. Orfeo, very good CPDH deck. Applies an enormous amount of pressure. It's super resilient, super scary. Mayhem Devil, another example. And I know I'm kind of speaking about decks that I'm familiar with here that I've built, but like there's others as well that could be built that could do a similar thing. And once those decks become more prevalent, the life totals might not need to be 25. And that's what's important to sort of mention about what you're saying,
So you're getting onto to circle back to Oubliette, right?
Oh.
So
and we're back.
I think we're all experiencing the format in the same way, in the fact that progressively creature quality on average is going up.
Yeah.
So eventually, now everyone here can remember in the early days of CPDH, the decks that were being featured were basically a very strong commander, and everything else was basically non-creature spell in support of that commander. In that circumstance, Oubliette is just crushing. But now, as Ryan is pointing out, like even myself, I'm trying to diversify my portfolio, that beyond a simple Voltron control deck like Drake, Crackling Drake, into like Conrad Rats or
And Conrad doesn't give a shit about Oubliette.
Nope.
I mean, well, kind of, but like not really. Like Gary doesn't care either, because the Gary deck is playing like Deadly Dispute, Village Rites, like all these different things.
Crypt Rats.
Crypt Rats. So this point is also really important to make too, and it's an interesting thing about how metas shift, right? Is that even though I'm quite outspoken about Oubliette, I'm building decks that don't care about Oubliette.
Yep.
If you Oubliette my Mayhem Devil, I'm kind of like, you could have put that on something else and you'd have a much more unhappy opponent. Does that make sense? Like there's other stuff out there that people are actually putting their Oubliettes on because they know I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's, the deck is built to not care. Mr. Orfeo is the same way. Yeah, like I double the power of stuff, but like my Annoyed Altasaur is gonna kill you. Like
it's already big.
Doesn't need to be 12 power to kill you. Like my Gurmag Angler is still big. Hooting Mandrill still hits hard. So
especially at 25 life. I mean,
at 25 life, yeah. I mean, we're
3 hits with the fugitive. It's 21. Like you're done.
Yep.
I think our games would be like 20 minutes if we played 25 life, man.
If we played,
it would just end instantly.
Yeah, even at 25, our games are like about hour to an hour and a half. That's kind of where they end up landing.
Control. There's a lot of control. Yeah.
There's a lot of control. The combo players are pretty fearful, I think, in our meta, because there's not enough of them where they can run in packs. If there were 2 combo players at every table, it would be totally different because you wouldn't be singled out. But if you are like the one combo player, you're just going to get your face pushed in super hard.